I'm Janine DeLay, a member of the Ann Arbor Area League of Women Voters, along with my friend and league member Zoe Benke. We are thrilled to introduce you to Liberty Awakes, the online version of an exhibit that we originally created in 2011 to chronicle the fascinating story of the leaders and activists in the Washtenaw County Votes for Women campaign during the years 1911 to 1920. You may know them as suffragists, or if you're a fan of Mary Poppins, you may know them as suffragettes after the Sister Suffragette song in the movie. There's an important difference between them, and we encourage you to teleport yourself through the full exhibit to find out exactly what that difference is. And of course, to discover a few things that you don't know about local history and the Votes for Women movement, which in 1920 passed the first milestone for women's voting rights with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Zoe and I are here to give you an exhibit preview with Lady Liberty nearby and to offer a few suggestions about how you may be inspired to see the exhibit and find new ways to talk about its major themes in your own words. So I'm going to check in with Zoe to begin our preview and to ask her this question: what is the exhibit Liberty Awakes all about, and what are its main themes?
Thanks, Janine. When we produced Liberty Awakes in 2011, we came up with 5 themes to explore the local movement based on the research, photos, and artifacts we had available to us at the time. First, our exhibit offers a colorful snapshot of the leaders of the local movement and their interactions with national and international suffrage leaders, including Jane Addams and the British suffragette Sylvia Pankhurst, who traveled to Ann Arbor to give public lectures. Second, it shows the political, financing, education, and even merchandising strategies the suffragists used to win over the hearts and minds of the public. Did you know that there were suffrage cookbooks sold to help fund the cause? Suffrage products like tea sets, fly swatters, and board games became quite popular. Third, we put on display the suffragists' organizational genius, especially their canvassing system for counting votes. A few of these methods are still in use today. A fourth theme is the details about major roadblocks and obstacles the suffragists faced, from election defeats, the political power of the saloon lobby, to organized groups who were anti-suffrage, including women. Finally, Liberty Awakes presents a suffrage movement's inventive political resistant tools, from large demonstrations and big parades to silent sentinels and voiceless speeches.
It's also worth telling about how we came up with the name for the exhibit, Liberty Awakes, and Zoe is ready to tell us.
The political resistant technique known as the voiceless speech is where we got the exhibit's name. Liberty Awakes was a still play without words that suffrage activists performed in public spaces in towns and cities. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, there was a long tradition of women silently acting out historical events in schools, on parade floats, and at civic pageants. So the name comes from one of these silent plays, which explicitly told audiences that voting for suffrage would lead to a new awakening of liberty and was for the good of all. And so our cutout of a suffragist, a woman who played the part of liberty, is the symbol of our exhibit. We call her Lady Liberty. When I did tours of the exhibit at the museum on Main Street in 2011, Lady Liberty was very popular. Most visitors wanted to have me take photos with her. It is one of my best memories of the exhibit. How about you, Janine? Do you have a favorite recollection or part of the exhibit?
Yes. Of all the boards from the original 34 and several new boards highlighting the impact and contributions of African American women to the suffrage movement, I think that the one called Everyone Loves a Parade, the suffragist demonstration, sums up what this exhibit is all about because it highlights the suffrage movement at its best and offers some insight into the most morally troublesome part of its history. The 1913 demonstration in Washington, D.C. was a majestic spectacle. It was orchestrated by suffrage leader Alice Paul, the founder of the Congressional Union. She was brilliant at political theater, and the demonstration included thousands of women and supporters. It was meticulously choreographed by Paul and her aides. In Winsor McCay's iconic drawing of the parade, it shows breadth and depth. The numbers are vast and reveal power, and were intended to show to the new president, Woodrow Wilson, on the eve of his inauguration, just how many women wanted the right to vote. The demonstrators were organized with care, delegations from countries where suffrage had already become law, such as New Zealand, to countries and state delegations with strong suffrage movements. The suffrage movement, as Zoe suggested, was worldwide, and this drawing points out that suffrage leaders had formed an international network and routinely shared their tactics and strategies. At the same time, in the parade were three locals, among them the Klager sisters of Ann Arbor. The drawing itself has a local twist. Winsor McCay, the artist, was a graduate of Cleary College and Michigan State Normal College, now Eastern Michigan University. As two of the three women from Ann Arbor were librarians, they would have been marching with groups organized and sorted by profession, such as lawyers, nurses, teachers, and businesswomen, or they were assigned to a section for university graduates. And it is in these groupings and sortings that we can also see and consider what is not featured and not included, which tells us something about the exclusionary history of the suffrage movement. There's a story about Ida B. Wells Barnett, an investigative journalist, educator, and one of the founders of the NAACP, and an admired African-American suffragist. When Ida B. Wells Barnett told the organizer, Alice Paul, that she was going to march and that many other Black suffrage leaders and activists were planning to join her, Paul assigned Wells and the other Black leaders and activists to a segregated section of the parade. It is less well known that Wells ignored Paul's order and marched with her home state delegation of Illinois, as did many other Black women who marched with their state delegations, including some from Michigan, and their professional groups, or as university graduates, including those from Howard University. The parade drawing keeps invisible two other issues shadowing the suffrage movement. One is the inadequate and fragmentary attempts to attract labor unionists. For example, the drawing does not identify factory workers as a group, though there were many who favored and stood up for the suffrage cause. Further, the drawing does not expose the constant harassment and even assaults that marchers were subject to and resisted as onlookers showered abuse, missiles, and charged them as they made their way on the parade route, resulting in over 100 women being hospitalized. I don't think there is any question we are reaping the benefits and cherish the dignity and common good achieved through the huge sacrifices, defiance and dissent, persistence, resilience, and resolve of all who marched in that demonstration more than a century ago. And while the votes for women advocates and activists did get fatigued, exhausted, weary, and many never saw the day when the 19th Amendment became enshrined into law. What comes through in so many of the diaries, accounts, and memories of their experiences is a sense of belonging and friendship, a feeling that their lives had worth and meaning, and an exhilaration and joy about what they were doing and had accomplished together. Wrote one of the tireless suffrage workers in a movement newspaper. It is indeed wonderful when one wakes in the morning to remember that now, at last, one is considered to be a real, complete human being.
As curators of this timeless exhibit, Janine and I are honored to be involved in one of the many celebrations of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. We also hope that in your own tour and virtual walkthrough of Liberty Awakes, that you ask, why is this particular exhibit at this particular time so essential in 2020? In the history of American democracy, we are all aware that the right to vote should never be taken for granted, and that history itself is contingent and moves in many different directions. That means for us, as members of the League of Women Voters, as citizens, and as defenders of democracy, that we must ensure we do not fall asleep. And that in order to retain our liberty, we must always be vigilant, especially of our most valued ideal, the consent of the people, which requires the right to vote. In this way, we can all learn from the suffrage movement to think about how we can keep our liberties awakened.